Dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure and great privilege to introduce this year's Meet the Mentor, Klaus Parsch. This is because he is a pioneer in pediatric orthopedics, and I probably don't need to introduce him at all to everybody. He is pioneer in pediatric orthopedics, both nationally and internationally. He is father and one of the fathers and founders of EPOS, so he does know everything about this society from its very beginning. And you will hear a lot of the history of EPOS, where it started, how it started, and where we are now. He has built a reference pediatric orthopedic center in Germany, in Stuttgart, where I'm working as his successor. And therefore, I'm really proud of introducing him and giving him the stage for this Meet the Mentor session.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for Salih Marangoz and myself, Stefan Huhnstock, to be moderators of this year's Meet the Mentor session. The present was an egg laid by the past that had the future inside its shell. EPOS has evolved for several decades and has an impressive way. And today, we're going to enjoy a fantastic talk by Klaus Parsch, who takes us along the exciting journey of our society. So we are just waiting for the presentation. Klaus, I was wondering, who gave the impulses to found a European society dedicated to children's orthopedics?
Yes, I'll be there in a second. So the impulse came from the American Society of Paediatric Orthopaedics, which was founded in 1971 by three people like Peter Paul Griffin, Douglas McKay, and especially Miran Tadjan. And the first meeting of this society, I have not been there because in 71, I was in different places. But the 10th meeting I attended, which was in Rancho Santa Fe in California. And there were several important people there, Peter Paul Griffin, Tadjan, John from Boston, and David Sutherland, and Lindsay Haley, and Bob Hensinger. And this foundation, which had taken place of the Second Society of America, was then put together as POSNA. This was created in 1984. Tadjan had also been very active in teaching his residents and his fellows and the pediatric orthopedic world in America and around the world, in doing courses in San Francisco and also in Chicago for many years, for 25 years. These seminars have been going on. And Tadjan has always been a big educator and writing a wonderful book on pediatric orthopedics. 4 volumes were published.
So, Professor Parsch, where was the EPOS founded, and what did the first meeting look like? Who were the first people who attended the first meeting?
That's a good question, a good answer, because it was all the initiative of Henri Benzahel, who had also met Tadjan in America. And at that time, he had met him at a Dean McEwen symposium in Wilmington, Delaware. And as Henri Benzahel wrote in a letter to us, the idea rose in my mind. I submitted this initiative to Dietrich Tönnis, José de Mesquita Montes, and Jörg Baumann, who agreed. I suggested to John Sherrard to join this group. He was at once enthusiastic, so occurred the foundation of EPOS.
Great.
And
John Sherrard was asked because he was important. At the same time, he had also written a big book on his own, like Tadgen, 2 volumes, first 3 volumes at the 3rd edition. And the invitation letter to come to this meeting in Paris was sent out by John Sherrard, inviting different people from all over Europe to join, from Yugoslavia, from Great Britain, from France, from Germany, and from Italy to join in this reunion. And this first meeting took place in Hôpital Bretonneau, which is in Paris, 18th arrondissement. And as you can imagine, it was a society founded under French laws. So the society was called Société Européenne d'Orthopédie Pédiatrique. And the objectives of this society were written in French and later translated into English. Objectives were the advancement of pediatric orthopedics in all aspects, particularly in the field of clinical practice, scientific research and teaching of those conditions which affect the locomotor system during growth. The society is dedicated to enhancing the care of children. And the first program was very little. There were only 6 papers, and they were all done, 5 presentations, and they were done without slides, just a talk on different topics, just to show that we start scientific work. And this was the group. It's worthwhile to remember. This was Jörg Baumann from Basel, and Jacques Lefort from France, and Dal Monte from Italy, Dietrich Tönnis from Dortmund, Mesquita Montes from Porto, John Sherrard, the founder, and the co-founder, Henri Benzahel, Miguel Ferrer from Spain, Klisic from Belgrade, Reimers from Copenhagen, Paige from Belgrade as well, and Klaus.
And I was wondering, what about the next meetings? Where did EPOS met and why were those cities actually chosen?
So the second meeting was held again in Paris because we thought we tried once again for a start not to go to different places. So we had a little program set up and we had quite a number of participants, already 21, almost doubled from the first meeting. And from more people from different European countries participated and very, very actively in discussing the problems of pediatric orthopedics. And the third meeting was, now we went outside Paris. We went to Basel and the Kinderspital of Switzerland. The local host was Jörg Baumann, one of the co-founders, and he was the author of this book on cerebral palsy operations, well known at that time. And we had quite a number of papers there, for example, also on ultrasound in a transmission image by Matthias from Münster, which was a huge machine, not comparable to the linear scanner later invented by Graf. And I talked already with the Graf machine on congenital dislocation of the hip as watched by ultrasound images, how the early reduction is performed. Klisic talked about his triple prevention in sort of a film. And this was important to him. Klisic from Belgrade. He had a high population with incidence of DDH, CDH. So he examined the child in the newborn stage, every child, by an orthopedic doctor. regular diapering and abduction just as prophylaxis, and examining the hips. Cleavage developmental displacement change of name was important, already started then, but then he thought that the traditional term congenital dislocation strongly suggests a gross prenatal malposition, which demands orthopedic correction. This actively discourages the engagement of other specialists who are naturally reluctant to accept responsibility, which belongs somewhere else. So the modern term should be developmental displacement of the hip, which would be much better. This third meeting of EPOS in Basel had already 28 participants from 14 countries. New members were there. Alain Di Meglio came in, Luciani from Mannheim, and I saw two people from Finland and Shlomo Porat from Israel. A new member, Alain Kailin, was there for the first time.
It's very inspiring, Professor Parsch. I'm really getting curious. So where did you go next?
So next decision was taken to go to Bologna. Bologna was a nice city in northern Italy. It had an Istituto Ortopedico Rizzoli, which meant that this institute had a long tradition. Vittorio Putti had worked there. We know him from the Putti-Platt procedure and other things. He was a great inventor and a collector of books. So he started a library with all orthopedic literature published in the world, in English, in Italian, in German, in French, and so on. And so all the library contains books from the first edition, from the first year of editing. Italy at that time was the first center of Europe in external fixation, because Italy had been involved by a filmmaker, Carlo Mauri, who had traveled with Thor Heyerdahl in a Ra expedition in the 70s, and he had been treated by Elizarov in Kurgan. And so he brought back the message to northern Italy, especially to Verona and also to Lecco, where Roberto Catano, who also traveled to the east, to Kurgan, to learn about the external fixation system of Elizarov, which involved the next years so much. At the same time, Italy was also strong in external fixation with the Calotasis. Calotasis with the Orthofix, which was the school of De Bastiani, Aldighieri, and also Giampaolo Trivella, who came to our reunions and taught us about Orthofix, which was very much in the mode at that time. Dietrich Tönnis had just published his book on dysplasia and dislocation of the hip. And we talked a lot about his examinations and his measurements. He was the collector of angles for all the work time. He loved to count the angles of all hip sorts in all ages. Reimers was there talking to us about his migration index. The migration index, which showed that a 3-year-old hip already shows maybe some signs of interruption of the Maynard-Shenton line, which doesn't look so dangerous, but 2 years later, it's a lot more, and so subluxation is starting. So the migration index was measured by Jürgen Reimers, and he taught us how to use that method. There were already 35 participants from 14 countries. And new members came up, which was fun to see, from northern countries, from Italy, from Spain even, and from France, more from Belgium and Finland, and the old ones you know before, Sharad, Benzahel, Di Meglio, Klisic.
So where did you go next, and what did you expect from the upcoming meetings?
We thought to have somebody involved who was already very known at that time, which was Tony Catterall, working in London, in the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, and had written the book on leg Calvé-Perthes disease, a very good specialist in many kinds of pediatric orthopedics, but also a good organizer and a good friend from then on. This EPOS meeting in London was a very friendly one, and with many guests attending this meeting. And this is one of the pictures with the president, which was Predrag Klisic at that time, replacing John Sharad, who had been the first president of our society. Henri Benzahel was still the secretary. Mesquita Montes was still there, and I was there as a young man. Also important was that at this fifth EPOS meeting in London, Lynn Staheli and Robert Hensinger had come. Lynn Staheli from Seattle, and Robert Hensinger from Michigan. And they were the co-editors of the Journal of Paediatric Orthopaedics. And Henri Benzahel wanted to start a cooperation with this journal, but it was started, but it didn't work out perfectly because we then showed that we had to found our own journal, which was edited by Henri Benzahel. It was first published in 1992. And then in 2007, we formed an own journal of children's orthopedics, also by Benzahel and Winthrop. And later on in the electronic version with Fritz Hefti and Winthrop, Shlomo.
So, Professor Parsch, it's really inspiring. And I imagine that it has been a great impact for this institutional developments in the way that pediatric orthopedic surgeons throughout Europe treat the patients. But I want to learn more from you, and how did it affect?
It was the effect of different meetings where we met different groups working in different countries. And that was, example, the meeting in Budapest, which was the first meeting behind the Iron Curtain with the local host of Tibor Vizgeletti, and already 49 participants from so many countries. And exactly at that time, there were 5 Americans, like Robert Bright, Sherman Coleman, George Simmons, Lynn Staheli, and Kay Wilkins. So they came to the meeting, and we had the impression they liked the type of meeting that we had and showed interest to cooperate even more. And that was vice versa, the same way that some more of our European colleagues went to the Poznan meetings, that or pre-OS meetings. And I make a double point for Austria, because Austria was then the home country of Reinhard Graf. Reinhard Graf, working in Stolzalpe, had developed on his own, far away from any other evolution and development, a way of looking for ultrasound images of a hip in the neonate or in the small age group. So this fundamentals of sonographic diagnosis of infants' hips was so important. It had a big impact on the world of pediatric orthopedics. Acclaimed and sometimes criticized, but very effective. Graf had run courses in Stolzalpe for many years. Since '85, he had done courses with so many people learning to do ultrasound. We also set up courses in Stuttgart to train ultrasound. And this is one of the pictures of Pune in India, when Graf taught Indian doctors how to do ultrasound in children. Sonography was also reflected in other European countries, especially by Nick Clark from Southampton, who wrote about the sonographic clarification of the problems of neonatal hip stability and many other papers on this topic. There was also criticism that the examination was not safe enough. It should be only reserved for at-risk population in an editorial of the JBGS. Ultrasonography in the hips was also very much enforced by Terje Terjesen in Trondheim, who wrote several papers and had a very big impact of other people learning to use ultrasound in hip screening. And he saw a big advantage of the dynamic versus static ultrasound evaluation. And he always has been an ambitious fighter against overdiagnosis and overtreatment, as he thought would happen in ultrasound screened countries like Austria and Germany.
Professor Parsch, EPOS have been the base for innovation within children orthopedics for many decades. And I was wondering if you could give us any examples from the past EPOS meetings where new idea and treatment concepts were introduced.
For example, this was the next meeting, which was in Amsterdam, hosted by Jan van der Eycken, a well-named oncological surgeon in pediatric cases of osteosarcoma and Ewing sarcoma. And there were already 70 participants and a high interest also from American side. The main topic was clubfoot, but clubfoot, very different from clubfoot treatment of nowadays. It was mainly about surgery, neonatal surgery, like proposed by Nando De Sanctis from Napoli, or overcorrections, undercorrections by surgery. So all was happening about Turco approach or Cincinnati approach, and not so much other things. But at the end, there came an influx from France that physical therapy can be so helpful. And this was especially Benzahel in Paris, and also from Di Meglio in Montpellier, that Benzahel talked about his physiotherapist called Guillaume, who was blind, who was treating children with clubfoot by daily consultation. They came to the hospital every day in their first weeks of life to be treated by him, by his, so we can call them sacred hands, to manipulate the clubfoot in the right direction, probably in the same way as later on with the Ponseti approach. But this was a big impact on us. The French people told us they could prevent big operations as often as possible. And Alain later wrote this classification on the clubfoot, which was important for many years, important way to treat a clubfoot. And then the first paper presentation of the embrochage centromedullaire élastique stable was given by Jean Prévost in this meeting in Amsterdam. And you would imagine this was such a new thing. Nobody had heard of this intermedullary nailing. We all knew about Küncher, we knew about rush pins, but this elastic nailing was a new system proposed by Jean Prévost and his school. Actually, it was the main inventor was Jean-Paul Métisot, who wrote this book in 1988. This was later also published in a good, excellent book by Pierre Lascombe. It had big impact on us all in our trauma cases to to have found this new system for not only femur fractures, but also tibias and forearms and humerus, possibly.
Sure, it's mind-opening for many of the participants right now in this session, viewing and listening to you. And I'm really curious about the next decades, how they're going to develop, and what you visioned to create for the development of the society. How did the next meetings go, like for the next decades?
It will be difficult to talk about the next 13 meetings and then other 19 meetings, but just to remember how I have to go back, that the next meeting was in Helsinki and then Athens, and again in Paris, and the first time in Jerusalem with Victor Bierlik, in Vienna with Franz Grill, in Porto with José Mesquita Montes, Brussels. A great meeting with so many people attending, with Vladi Lokietek, then in Prague, in Mannheim, Madrid, Göteborg, in Milan, and Montpellier, the biggest meeting of all of this century. And then on to Istanbul with Ayşegül Bursali and Gazi Sora. London, again London, Geneva with André Kelin, Palma de Mallorca with Ignacio Sampera, Dresden, Sorrento, Warsaw, Lisboa, second time Portugal, Zagreb, Croatia, Basel, again in Basel, Helsinki, again in Helsinki, Athens, again in Athens, Bruges in Belgium, Marseille in France, Roma, Barcelona, the EPOS Annual Meeting together with Americans, and the Oslo meeting, and finally with Terje Teresen, and finally with Dror Ovadia in Tel Aviv.
As a Parsch, research is really a cornerstone of our society. And I was wondering, how did it start and how did it evolve in the early days with research projects and multi-center studies?
Of course, we were active, and there were some people who were more active than others in research, and one of them was Franz Grill from Vienna, he did the first multi-center EPOS study on the use of the public harness, which was not so popular at that time in America, but was very popular in Europe. Public came from Czechia. And so with Benzahel and Kanyadel from Spain, and Dumel from Prague, and Matazovic from Croatia, and Vitskeletti from Hungary, he published about 3,611 hips in 2,600 patients from 6 centers treated with the public harness. And the second study was by Benzahel and Dalmonte and Hjemstad and Berghem from Norway and Sweden, Winthrop and Bierlik and Porat from Israel, and Matazovic from Croatia, to have this congenital dislocation collection of 56 knees. And the third study was a multi-center study on idiopathic clubfoot, published again by Benzahel, together with Di Meglio, in between Tony Cottrell with his own ideas on the practical application of clubfoot therapy, again showing that there were so many that had surgery and so few yet at that time to have little surgery or any other therapy, like the French method. And the fourth study was signed by Fritz Hefti from Basel about osteochondritis dissecans, a big collection of almost 800 cases of OD presented in this multi-center EPOS study. And there was still another study, which was very important, the treatment of approaches for congenital pseudarthrosis, collection of 340 children. And that on CPT, very important, decided by Grill again, by Polini and others.
So, Professor Parsch, having reviewed the research development in EPOS education is also another landmark. And I wonder, how did education efforts start, and what were the initial seminars, courses, and the teaching efforts that our founders of the society have developed?
Thank you for this question. We had a big idea to start seminars. And the first seminar was held again in the Instituto Rizzoli in Bologna, with a big group there attending, 38 participants, not to be compared to Tadgen's courses with 300 or 500 people, but important to see, we had Erika Lambrecht there already, our first lady in this group, and again also Anna Nunziata Rega from Napoli. So this made important impact on our all-men society, a gender distribution of not the first kind, but still good. So here we are, the group of teachers in this Bologna Institute, and the topic was bone tumors, because Bologna had been at that time the center of Mario Campanacci, who was the specialist on bone tumors of the whole Europe and actually the world. We had the second EPOS postgraduate seminar in Stuttgart with topics of main interest of myself. I was for a long time had been working on spina bifida patients and arthrogrypotic patients, and I had big interest in septic arthritis, osteosarcoma and Ewing sarcoma, and femoral shaft fractures with presentation by Jean Prévost. So this was a seminar with 95 participants, had a good information level, and was well received. The third seminar was held in Pamplona, organized by Julio de Pablos, with so many participants, mainly from Spain, 110 participants. And then the fourth seminar organized by André Kehlin in Geneva on pelvic and femoral osteotomies. So these were 2-day seminars of important value for the students or the younger doctors, and also the participant older doctors, to learn more about this specialty.
Professor Parsch, how was the further development of the educational system of EPOS?
Now, this was a difficult problem, because at that time, when we stopped, the last seminar was in 92. So then it was a long stop until the next century, when Franz Grill and Shlomo Weintraub had started a move towards financing this course structure by the European community. And they achieved to get a large amount of money to form this curriculum and do the teaching service in different cities like Vienna, Helsinki, Marseille, and Tel Aviv. And these 4 people have been so important and followed by others responsible for these Marie Curie international instructional courses. So after the long break of 94 until 2006-07, we didn't have really an effort to do more education. An example of the course in Vienna is Reinhard Graf teaching about the situation of the femoral head in the joint by ultrasound. Ernesto Ippolito showing the casting in prosthetic treatment of clubfoot. Michael Benson showing us the way he does the pelvic osteotomy, and Shlomo Weintraub showing his ultrasound imaging of the small baby's hip. And now the last thing to remember is that this group, like in 2007, showed a good proportion of ladies, to show you that we have become a major part of our society. And the young ones carried on this message that pediatric orthopedics is interesting and stimulating and will be a good future ahead of us.
Professor Parsch, having been involved since the first day and witnessing the developments of our society, what is your vision about the future of EPOS?
Now, going to this slide shows you that we have visited many parts of Europe. Not all, not been to Romania, or Bulgaria, Albania, Ukraine, but many countries, and have seen that all these countries have formed their own Paediatric Orthopaedic Society and have attended our EPOS meetings and have seen that we have a bright future ahead of us. There is no way of complaining that we have a hard time. We have a wonderful subject to touch, to treat, and our patients are rewarding and have been rewarding all the time. And even to my age, it's still rewarding to see my former patients sometimes after 20 or 30 years be having their own children. So EPOS, as shown here from 1982 to 2019 and now to 21, is ready for a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Parsch. All right. Stefan, do you have any other questions?
No, I was really astonished about the history, and it was a very, very nice journey Klaus Parsch took us along with.
I'm very much thrilled. Let's look at if we have any messages from the audience.
So far, I couldn't see any.
Okay, then Professor Parsch, if you don't have any other words to add, we would like to invite you and all of the participants of the session to a fun part to see if they have listened to the details that you have explained.
You invite us to a party?
Well, that's the only party we can invite you to now due to the restrictions, but you're gonna love it. So I'm sharing my screen to let everyone know what we're doing. We are going to join for a 10-minute long Kahoot experience, including some of the details that Professor Parsch has explained during his talk, and some others that will make you smile. To join it, you have to either go to web www.kahoot.it, or if you have the app already, you can follow that path. As I see many names popping up, people are ready to roll. So once you are online with the Kahoot.it, it will ask you a game pin. It's 4156816. May I ask from OIC to write this pin number and the Kahoot IT web address in the Q&A session so that anyone who joins the session after I close this window will still be able to join the Kahoot game wherever they have joined. I hope you are hearing some of the intro music from Kahoot. And I have to remind everyone that there will be a 15 seconds delay from from the application you are following and from the web platform. It means you will see the questions before I speak about the questions. I hope you will take that into account. I will try to be slow at the pace, and I will give more time in the first question so that everyone is used to what we're doing, and basically just to warm it up. I see many nicknames, and I also see first and last names that I can recognize. Welcome all. It's not a win or lose, it's gonna be an all-win game. We will enjoy it very much, and the first three will get a prize from Kahoot. But it is fun, believe me. So just relax, and if everyone is ready, we can start the game. All right, let's go. So the first question will be for 1 minute length, just as I mentioned, to get people ready. It's an easy one. Where was the 39th EPOS Annual Meeting originally planned to be held? Barcelona, Porto, Stockholm, Warsaw. You got already 44 answers and going up. We have about 30 more seconds to go. And I'm happy that everyone is enjoying it. If you turn up the music, and if you can hear the music, it will be even more fun, believe me. But the problem is you can't hear the music from your apps. It's only be heard on the platform. So 72 votes for Porto. Let's go to the next slide. And I didn't mention, but the quicker you respond, you will get a higher score. The second question is going to be 30 seconds long, not 1 minute. The most prominent stimulator to start EPOS. Mike Tagian, Bob Salter, Douglas McKay, Dean McKeown. It was mentioned in Professor Parsch's slides. We got 70 plus answers already. Good. Mike Tagian was the right answer. So Mark scored the highest and quickest. Let's go. Ignacio moved to the third rank. Third question. Which of the following was the foundation place of EPOS? Hôpital Robert Debré, Hôpital Saint-Vincent de Paul, Hôpital Trousseau, Hôpital Bretonneau. Obviously, it's a French hospital, but which one? If you were careful enough, it was mentioned in the presentation. We got 70 plus answers again. Good. Hôpital Bretonneau was the right answer. So let's see. Comprox is being the highest ranking score now. The next question, who proposed to use the term developmental instead of congenital in hip dislocation? This is a tip. It was the article. If you go back and you can read the article, it was John Sherrard, Dietrich Tönnis, Jörg Reimers, or Petra Klisic. It was initially congenital, as you all know, but now today we all refer it to developmental. not congenital anymore. Yes, it was Klisic. Tough round. The next question, well, the last three questions actually. The world's most dedicated orthopedic library named after this man in this picture. Who is he? Joseph Malgaigne, Lorenz Börler, Ambroise Paré, Vittorio Putti. Yes, it was Vittorio Putti. Thomas Wirth, congratulations. Who were the first editors of JPO, Journal of Paediatric Orthopaedics, as of name that time? Henri Bensahat, Shlomo Wintrup, Paul Peter Griffin, Mike Tajian, Morris Carroll, Dennis Wenger, Lynn Staley, Robert Hensinger. If you recognize their faces, it's written here. We got the most number of answers to this question, and it was Lynn Staley and Robert Hensinger. So again, Thomas Wirth. Cool. Which of the following female EPOS member moved from active to emeritus status in 2021? This is a tricky question. Anna Nunziata Rega, Ayşegül Bursalı, Deborah Eastwood, Erika Lamprecht. In this picture, Professor Parsch has named two of the following choices already, but only one of them has moved to emeritus status in 2021. If you were careful enough in the GA, it was mentioned. It was a tricky question, as I said. It was Erika Lamprecht who moved from active to emeritus status, and we thank her for her all the things she has done for our society. So Mike Millis is moving up. Thomas Wirth still not gonna lose the presidency and the first line. And the last question. Which European capital has not hosted an EPOS Congress yet? Isn't it unbelievable? Where is it? It's not written here. Is it London? Is it Madrid? Is it Copenhagen? Or is it Paris again? Oops, just made a hint. All right, it was Copenhagen, folks, and thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you in Copenhagen next year. And let's see who ranked the first three. It was Klaus. Wow. Mike Millis. And the winner is?
Thomas.
Dr. J. Congratulations, Dr. J. Thomas Wirth is running fifth, it's shown. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this Kahoot, and we will love to continue this experience if you loved it. Thank you so much.
That was the best part.
We still have 5 more minutes, but if you don't have any questions, we can close the session.
May I close the session?
Please.
Because I think this was an absolute highlight we have just had in the past hour. A fantastic journey through EPOS history and pediatric orthopedics in Europe and actually worldwide. So real experience. And then to make this funny in the end was the just top of the pop. So thank you, Salih, for doing this. Thank you, Stefan, for preparing all this together with Klaus. And thank you, Klaus, for true highlight of this virtual meeting. And it makes it interesting how much we can do just with a screen. So see you in a couple of minutes. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.